We are the only synagogue in South Bergen County, south of Hackensack, and we service Jewish people from the entire South Bergen County and the Meadowlands. I think in the 18th century already Jewish people started moving here. However, in the 1880s, a lot of Jewish people started immigrating from Russia, from Hungary, from Europe, and that's when Jewish people started moving to the area. So Passaic was the first area that started having synagogues and shoals and community centers for the Jewish people. And the Jewish people from the surrounding cities, Lyndhurst, Rutherford, Patterson, would come to Passaic for services. That's what they would they'd go for holidays, they'd go for Hebrew school, and for synagogue, that's where they would go. Then it was in the early 1900s, 1919, where Jewish people from this area, from South Bergen County, decided that they wanted to make their own community. Many Jewish people don't drive to shul on Shabbos, they don't drive to synagogue, they walk. So to walk to Passaic was a challenge for many Jewish people. And they decided to set up their own synagogue here in 1919, and that was in East Rutherford. And it was, I believe it's called the Hebrew Center of South Bergen, Hebrew Jewish Center. And it was on Park Avenue, right across the railroad in East Rutherford. It started to build up slowly, the community, and in the 1940s, there were a lot of Jewish immigrants coming from Europe, escaping the war, and the community, they had a Hebrew school at that time, they had a full-time rabbi, and they had outgrown their facility, and they started looking for a new place. At that point, there were 500 members in the community just living in this area. When I say this area, I mean Karlstadt, Lyndhurst, Rutherford, East Rutherford, and they began to search for a new facility. And in the early 1950s, at first they purchased a plot of land on Union Avenue and Mortimer. That's where they purchased a plot or two of land, and they had planned to build a new facility, not just a synagogue, but a community center. And I believe their budget was $150,000. That's what it would take to build their dream facility here in South Bergen County. And they wanted a gym, and they wanted a synagogue, they wanted conference rooms, Hebrew school rooms, everything for just $150,000. And apparently this house here at 185 Montrose Avenue became available. At that point, this house was owned by Dr. Willis and his family. They lived at this home. And in 1953, it was purchased by the Jewish community. This house was designed by architect Hermann Fritz. Hermann Fritz built many mansions, many homes. There are many examples of them here in New Jersey. It's published in different articles and newsletters of the time. And his style was to build a grand mansion with a large entrance hall, a large foyer. That was his statement, that was his style, that was his signature. And he decided to build this Queen Anne mansion in 1890. Construction began, and he built it for the Danaheim family. We think it's Rudolf Danaheim. He was a councilman here in town, and it was built for him. It was completed in 1891, and this is where the family lived. There's an iconic tower outside, part of the house. That was Hermann Fritz's designs. As you can see from different examples, even around town, to have a tower as part of the house. And eventually they added a wraparound porch to the home, as was the style of the times, as the styles developed. So the Danaheim family lived here from 1891 until approximately 1923. In 1923, the house was sold to the Willis family. Dr. Willis lived here with his family. I believe they say he had 8 children. He lived here in this mansion, and they lived here from 1923 for approximately 30 years till 1953, when it was sold to the Jewish community. There's many bedrooms upstairs, and there's downstairs here. There's the old-fashioned, there was the entertaining room, there was the music room, there's a beautiful dining room with wooden walls, there was a cellar downstairs, and being that this was an old house, all over there were working fireplaces that they would use during the winter time. There wasn't electricity at that point, so they had gas lamps throughout the house, and we still have a lot of the the beautiful lamps, and you could see the pipes where the gas would come from. And interesting for that time, in the master bedroom, there was a bathtub and a shower, which was very advanced for that time, to be able to have that indoors. And there was the maid's stairs and the maid's quarters. And I think there were even little buttons that they would be able to, or strings they could call the maids. This was a mansion from that time. In a 2006 interview with Jean Willis, who was one of the children, she describes what it was like living here in this mansion with the large backyard, the outdoors, and there used to be a stable in the back of the home as well, which now was converted into a house, which is on the street, Hackett Street behind us. And this was a mansion. So this would fit perfectly for the Jewish community. The Jewish community, number one, they needed classrooms for their expanding Hebrew school. We have members now who studied at this Hebrew school and had their bar and bat mitzvahs here at the synagogue. We have one member, Sabet Behar. He just turned 90 this past year in May, and he was here in the 1930s in Hebrew school when it was still in East Rutherford on Park Avenue. And he remembers he was the president of this community for a while. And I've spoken to different members, different people who were members here in the 60s, in the 50s, and they have a lot of warm memories and nice memories from the community here. There was a nice-sized Jewish community here. A lot of the stores on Park Avenue were owned by Jewish people, and it was a nice community. And they needed, so as I mentioned, they needed the Hebrew school rooms. They needed a large room for services. At that point, they had over 500 members. They wanted to be able to host everybody. And they also wanted it was very popular at the time to have a Jewish community center. So they wanted there should be a gym, an auditorium where they'd be able to make shows. There should be a stage. There would be basketball hoops so they could play basketball. So they wanted a facility that was large enough. And you either need to build it yourself or find a home which was large enough. So they found this mansion. This mansion is over an acre of property. It sits on over an acre of property, of land. So they had the mansion, which most of it was used for the Hebrew school, the actual house. And then they built an extension, a very large gym auditorium, which eventually also became the synagogue, where they would host services for high holidays, weekly services. They had a weekly newsletter called the Shofar. The Shofar is the ram's horn that we blow on Rosh Hashanah. So this was their weekly proclamation. So they had a newsletter called the Shofar. And originally it was sort of a conservative community. That was the style of the community. They had mixed seatings. They didn't have a separation between the men and the women. It was a conservative congregation, and that's how it was for many years. And then in the 1970s, people started to move away from Rutherford. The younger Jewish people started seeking jobs elsewhere. They started moving away. They didn't stay in Rutherford with their families. A lot of the older members of the community moved to Florida, and it began to shrink the community. It got smaller and smaller. Eventually, they didn't use the gym anymore because there weren't enough people to fill such a large gym. So they moved to the house, which is where we host services now. And that was the style. This is how the community kept going for many years. We have members of our community, an Iranian couple. They just moved a few months ago. He was here since 1965, and a wonderful couple. And we still have the members here, the Wolf family, who've been members of Rutherford for over 50 years. They've resided here in Rutherford on Washington Avenue, and they've grown with the community. And they remember how it was then, and they remember how it was in the gym, and how it later on it was moved upstairs. But the community has always been here. And in South Bergen County, this event of Jewish people moving out of town wasn't just for Rutherford, the entire South Bergen County and the Meadowlands. A lot of shuls started closing down, and Passaic as well. Shuls started closing down. Communities started merging together. At this point, Secaucus doesn't have its own synagogue, And in South Bergen County, there's a small shul in Kearney, but in the south of Hackensack, this community has remained and has continued to function for almost 100 years. I mean, we're right now in 2018. We'll be in 2019 very soon. It's our centennial anniversary of this community, and there's always been services here. There's always been a rabbi. There's constantly been activity here of the Jewish community. And around 20 years ago, so I would say the late 1990s, members of the community of the board decided that they want, although they're a conservative synagogue, they want that the rabbi should be a traditional rabbi, one who follows the tradition. Some call them Orthodox rabbis, but it's a traditional rabbi, and they started hiring traditional rabbis, Orthodox rabbis, to lead the community. And my wife and I, we moved here in the summer of 2014, and we moved here with our family. We had a 6-week-old son at that point. We had 3 children. Our youngest was 6 weeks old, and we moved here before the high holidays, and we felt that there are a lot of Jewish people here in the area, but they weren't becoming in contact with the synagogue. That could be for many reasons. A lot of them weren't raised with going to synagogue. A lot of them hadn't gone to Hebrew school. A lot of them weren't aware of the services that the community was offering. And we decided that all our services, all our programming should be child-friendly. So we began to incorporate entertainers and different programs for the community to attract more people. And my wife opened up a Hebrew school in 2015, 2016 year. And we feel that a lot of people now, a lot of young families especially, are moving to the area. A lot of young Jewish families are joining our synagogue and are joining our programs. It's their sense of Jewish identity. They want to belong to something. And we have Jewish people coming from all over the area. We have from Secaucus, we have from Woodridge, Hasbrook Heights, Garfield, Lodi, Passaic, Nutley, Bloomfield. People come from all over. And it's beautiful to see the community grow again. And we've outgrown our space. For many of our services, we cannot host them in the upstairs home anymore. Our Hebrew school now has 3 classes. We've expanded every year. And when we make our Hanukkah menorah event, which is always open to the community, every year we try to honor different members of the community. One year we honored the police officers of South Bergen County. They were getting a lot of flack the past few years. So we decided we want to show our support to the police community. So we honored the police officers. We had a representative from each police district precinct come, and we give them a medal and a plaque to honor them. One year we honored the fire departments and the police departments of Rutherford. Another year we honored the veterans living in our area. So we reach out to the community, and we try to do programming for the community. And when we do these events, our Hanukkah event, our Purim event is more of a dinner, we can get over 100 people. So we go back to the gym, which for many people in the community, those who remember the past, remember having services there, it's very beautiful for them. And they tell me that it's incredible that after 30 years, we're going back to the larger area, the larger auditorium. When we have our end of year graduation for our preschool, for our Hebrew school, also we do it in the gym because we need the space. So it's really beautiful to see how South Bergen is having a comeback. And a lot of what influenced my wife and myself is that we come from a background of Chabad. Chabad is a religious Jewish sect, of a Hasidic sect of Judaism. It represents the understanding, more Kabbalistic, mystical side of understanding godliness and the world and of serving God through joy and through happiness. And we were greatly influenced, my wife and myself, by the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Schneerson who lived in Brooklyn, New York. And I actually grew up next door to the Rebbe's home. We lived right next door on President Street. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe's motto was, don't just worry about yourself, worry about someone else. You could learn, you could study, you could serve God, but what about everyone else? What about the wider Jewish community? And this is post-Holocaust. So this is, the Rebbe became the Rebbe. He became the Jewish leader in 1950. This is right after the Holocaust. And he said, there are many Jewish people who weren't educated as Jews or have suffered tremendously and they have nothing. Don't just care about yourself. Reach out to others. And that's something that influences my wife and myself. That's why we reach out to the Jewish people in the area. We visit people. We encourage people to light Shabbat candles. We deliver matzah before Passover. And this has brought much blessings and success to the community. It's the outreach, how we reach out to people to bring them in. And we're a very non-judgmental community. People come as they are. We're a very eclectic group. You have the rabbi, who's an Orthodox rabbi with a beard and the kippah and the tzitzit, and you have people who come as they are. Some with no knowledge of Judaism, some with minimal knowledge of Judaism, some with more. And we have a very wide array of congregants, and they all feel comfortable here because it's a very non-judgmental place, and we welcome everybody. So in January 2012, the previous rabbi was living here. His name was Rabbi Nelson Schumann. He was living here with his wife and 5 children. I believe his father was living here in the home as well. And 2 young 21-year-olds, they did not like Jews. I spoke with the police officers involved in the investigation and the prosecutor's office. And these 2 gentlemen, one was the mastermind behind it. His name was Dalal, and he said, let's kill Jews. And there's a fellow Graziano from Garfield, and he assembled Molotov cocktails, and he targeted this synagogue. Other synagogues in Bergen County as well, he targeted, but this was the only one that was actually, bombs actually went off. And he came here in January 2012, and he threw Molotov cocktails into the rabbi's bedroom upstairs. And he also threw different cans, aerosol cans, so when the explosion explodes, it should have a greater impact. And he said at the court case that he heard people shouting, and he heard people yelling, and that was what he wanted. He wanted to kill as many Jews as he can. And when I asked the inspector and the detectives why, what was the motive behind it, they said he just hated Jews. They have messages that he sent to his friends, and when he failed at a JCC, to a different JCC, Jewish Community Center, to have Molotov cocktails explode, he said, shucks, it didn't work. Next time I'll make sure that we'll accomplish our goal. And thank God, most of his Molotov cocktails did not explode. One did break through the window and exploded in the rabbi's bedroom. The blanket went on fire. The rabbi was quick thinking. He quickly lifted it with his hand and threw it outside the window, burning his hands. But thank God he was able to save his family. And his wife, her name is Passy, she lives here in Bergen County, and he said, let's run out of the house. And she says, what if they're waiting outside to kill us? It was a very scary time for the rabbi living here and the Jewish community. The synagogue, this is South Bergen County, it's a very safe neighborhood, it's a very quiet neighborhood, and all of a sudden, our synagogue was attacked. And the police department, the fire department, the FBI, and the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office did an incredible job doing the investigation and prosecuting the crime, which was the first crime that was given the verdict as a terrorist attack in New Jersey, which was a new thing that they came up with after 9/11, that there could be state terrorism as well, not just international terrorism who comes in. But what was amazing, what came out of this, it was a terrible event, and it shook up the Jewish community. There's still people today who, when it comes to high holidays, they say, Rabbi, do we have additional security? And I always reach out to Chief Russo from the Rutherford Police Department, and he's always really kind and really accommodating, and he sends different cars around here to keep an eye on us. But it still affects people, and many times we still live upstairs, and we are in a home, and we're like, what if it would happen again? And it's a really scary thing. But what was beautiful that came out of it was the sense of community from the Rutherford community. Everyone in Rutherford offered to help. I still get comments from people. They say, oh, we remember that, and we're behind you, we watch you. We had from the Rutherford Civil Rights Movement, we had from Felician College, and other organization Rutherford who reached out to the Jewish community, offered a hand, offered support, which was a beautiful, very beautiful sense of unity that came from this. And a sense of pride also, that it wasn't just an attack against the Jewish community in Rutherford, but it was an attack against Rutherford. This is a beautiful, peaceful town. We don't tolerate this in Rutherford. And our neighbors are always keeping an eye out on us, which is beautiful. If they see something, they report it. If someone hangs around too long outside the synagogue, if someone starts taking pictures of the synagogue, they report it. There's a beautiful sense of a community feeling that this brought about, which is we're very lucky to be here in Rutherford. It's a really warm community. My wife and I, this is our 5th year here. We've only had wonderful interactions with people from the community, very kind people, wonderful people, and they've welcomed the Jewish community for 100 years now. And we look forward to the next century of warm relationships between the county and the city of the borough of Rutherford.